Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. The Canadians play an absolutely incredible game here. They win 7-3 over the New York Islanders in this one. And again, what a great performance from the Canadians all the way around here. Obviously, there's still some mistakes. There's still some things that the Canadians could definitely clean up if they want to be, a 60-minute performing team and all that kind of stuff. But they found a way, especially in crunch time, to make things happen. And like it's the top line. All three of those top line guys found a way tonight to make things happen. And what do you know? Like you don't often see a game where Slavkovsky and Caulfield are the guys you're talking about as the guys that are making things happen, and guys like like Suzuki had a great performance as well. Lane Hudson, I arguably this might be a hot take, but I think Lane Hudson played one of the worst games of his career tonight, and we still found a way to win 7-3 in this one. So it's just people getting and figuring things out, and like we're just committing to the game, and finding a way to make things work here. Caden Gooley came up big, scored a big goal here to kind of, be the catalyst for that third period kind of, routing of the Islanders there at the end. But overall, it's just a huge win, and I don't have to tell any Habs fan about what that means in terms of the standings. It's a huge game there. Puts us at 86 points in 69 games, 38, 21, and 10 altogether. It pushes the Islanders back down as well. They're the team that's, knocking on the door of the playoffs. Although, the Ottawa Senators and even the Philadelphia Flyers, they're both at, 80, 81, and 80 respectively there. So they're definitely knocking on the door as well. We got to find a way to, push them down as well. But it's definitely big to get some separation over any team not currently in a playoff position, because again, like every team is coming, every team is winning games. Columbus won another one, although it doesn't seem like they're going to be much of a threat moving forward now that they're stuck in that Metropolitan Division top three. We're not going to be competing against them as much, but even still, we're playing them, in a couple days or whatever. So we got to find a way to get a win against them too. But again, just finding a way to push teams that are outside of the playoffs down and push ourselves up as much as we can is a huge deal. Obviously, we're still waiting to see what happens with Boston and Detroit, as they're still playing. They're in the third period as I am speaking right now. So we'll have to see what happens there. Hopefully, one of those teams ends up winning in regulation. We can cross our fingers for that, because we don't want both of those teams getting points out of this one. That would not be helpful for us. But either way, it's great to get points there. Obviously, as I said in our last video, that our fate is still securely in our own grasp here. We've got our fate in our own hands. We just got to find a way to keep getting points, keep winning. And if we keep playing the way that we played in that third period against the Islanders today, that will not be a problem moving forward. So let's go into the game here. We started off really hot, 4 minutes in. Uri Slavkovsky gets his 26th goal of the season on the power play. It's just a great setup. I feel like it's one of that setup that they keep going with all the time. It definitely works. This setup was a little bit different. It wasn't quite like the pop pass kind of tic-tac-toe situation, but Cole Caulfield finds Nick Suzuki on the wall. They had a great chance with Demidov earlier on that didn't quite go, but they reloaded. Suzuki gets his head up and he looks, and Slavkovsky actually kind of backs off of his usual position. He got a little bit away from the traffic there into the high slot area. Suzuki found him really wide open for a one-timer, and he does not make a mistake. He absolutely nails this one-timer into the back of the net. Actually, a great shot there, and taking advantage of our power play opportunities is always so important. We do exactly that in this one. Slavkovsky gets his 26th goal of the season, leading the team in power play goals, and it's just an absolute wire of a shot from Slavkovsky that finds his way through. Suzuki gets his 58th assist here, and Cole Caulfield his 30th assist of the season on that one. So great plays all around. All of three of those guys had great performance, and it really shows in the stats, and the way that we won this game here. So a good start there, and then unfortunately what happens immediately after that, we're absolutely dominating the first period here, and then Caden Gooley gets a little bit overly aggressive with Matthew Schaefer. Makes sense, trying to send a message, all that jazz, but unfortunately we get a little bit too aggressive and take a penalty. That penalty turns into an Emil Heinemann goal, which we're all too familiar with. His release there, I feel like, it would have been nice if a Fowler was a little bit out in his crease a little bit more. I think that might have made the save a little bit easier for him, but also at the same time, we know how good Heinemann is with that puck. He can absolutely rip that thing. I don't think Fowler was ready for that shot to come through as fast and as accurate as it did. So, all credit to him for getting that goal there. But at the same time, it's tough. Like, I hate to blame anybody for that kind of thing, but I feel like Gooley needs to be a little bit better there, not taking a penalty, especially when all of the momentum was on Montreal's side at that time, and taking that penalty takes the momentum out of it, takes the crowd out of it a little bit, and we end up tying. They end up tying the game up in a situation where they really had no business even being in the game at all. All of a sudden, it's a tie game, and then we go on, 13 minutes in. Holmstrom scores a nice little, forehand, backhand deke there, and that one is Lane Hutson's fault, in my opinion, as well. As I said before, I do not think Hutson had a strong game at all in this one. This is most of the reason for it is he's trying to do way too much. He's trying to, make the fancy play, and we understand that, Lane Hutson is very much a magician with the puck. He can make a lot of things happen with that puck, and he does really good things in the offensive zone. But in this situation, he's just doing too much. He's trying to get around everybody. At a certain point, you have to cut your losses and take a shot on net, pass the puck, dump it in, something like that. He doesn't do any of those things. He loses it, and all of a sudden he's not available on the back check, and Simon Holmstrom ends up getting a breakaway. That's Hudson's guy. He needs to be on that guy, and I love the offensive mindset. Obviously I want him to be offensively inclined and find ways to get us on the score sheet, but in this one his offense doesn't really turn into anything, and unfortunately he's not in his position to play defense as a result, and that ends up going in the back of our net. So I think that that's something that's come up a couple times recently where Hudson has gotten a little bit too overzealous in his own zone, or in our zone, and kind of sacrificing his defensive responsibilities, and I'm not going to say by any means that he should, be altering the way that he plays offensively. I think that that's, definitely his X factor and what he brings to this team more than anything else. And I'm not even going to say that Lane Hutson is necessarily a poor defenseman. I feel like he definitely finds ways to get it done defensively, and he's really solid. But I think especially on those transitions when he's on the puck in the offensive zone trying to make offensive plays, and then the puck transitions the other way, I feel like he needs to be a little bit better, a little bit more mindful of where he's at, where the opposition is at, and know when it's time to cut your losses and play defense and live to fight another day. So I think that's something that's been coming up a little bit, and something that he'll need to work on moving forward there. But sometimes it's easy to forget that Hudson is only a second-year NHL player. This is only a sophomore season in the NHL. He's still very much learning and growing as as time goes on there, and he's only going to get better as things go along. And I think that definitely the defensive side of the game and playing defense in the NHL is something that is not necessarily his strong suit at this time. And I think that as he goes along, he's going to get better at those opportunities. It's just something that throughout the remainder of this season and into hopefully the playoffs this year, we'll have to keep an eye on that and make sure that that's something that not just him but all of our defensemen are aware of and taking priority to is our defensive side of our game there, especially on that transition. So unfortunate there. I feel like it was definitely disappointing and very much unfortunate to leave that first period where we pretty much dominated. The shot totals were like 17-6 or something like that after the first period. It was definitely disappointing to walk away from that with not even a lead there, not even a tie, down by one, despite outshooting them by quite a lot there. But it's unfortunate, and that's the way things go. But we bounced back pretty well. I think there were definitely some chances for the Islanders that could have made things worse. Obviously, Schaefer had that one goal that was, disallowed because it was very much a high stick. But it would have been a cool goal if it was allowed. But obviously, it's twice of his height or whatever reaching over top of him to score that one. So unfortunately, that one does not count for him. But get Newhook going down the other way. He'll find a way to get this one tied up again. Great chances all the way around. Demidov had some good chances right in before that. Felt like Demidov played a great game despite the fact that he's not on the score sheet tonight. But Newhook does get on the score sheet. It's a great play by Gooley, who had himself a pretty good game. Obviously, a little bit disappointed with that penalty he took in the first period, but he definitely made up for it as the game went along. Hit a great assist here. He had great poise. Demidov and Newhook both had a chance to score just moments before off of a nice passing attempt from Kapanen. Both of them kind of end up whiffing on the puck, and it goes over to Gooley. Gooley could have easily just shot this thing right back on the net, and I wouldn't have even really been upset about that at all. But I like the presence of mind to look for the open man. Newhook was wide open for a one-timer opportunity off of that right side there. He gets the puck and he bangs it past Sorokin to tie that game up at 2. It's his 10th goal of the season. Caden Gooley gets his 7th assist, and Oliver Kapanen his 14th there. So great work by that line in general. I didn't think they had a great performance on Thursday's game, and I think they really stepped their game up in this one, and that's a huge goal from Newhook to tie that game up. Could have easily been up until that point, actually, in that second period, it was very much a defensive performance from the Islanders that we really weren't getting anything going offensively at all. So having Newhook in there to find a way to get us on that score sheet, tie that game up, really change the perplexion of the game overall there. So, and then Cole Caulfield is doing what he does best. 2 minutes later, we get a power play opportunity. They're pretty blatant. There were a lot of penalties that I feel like weren't called in this one in our favor, which is unfortunate for us. But we did take advantage of the opportunities that we had, namely this one from Cole Caulfield, a great opportunity there. It was a pretty blatant interference call there, and we got the opportunity to go on the power play with the last minute or so of that second period, and then Cole Caulfield just doing Cole Caulfield things. He gets a pass from Suzuki down low, and obviously whenever Cole Caulfield is down by the goal line, a goalie's got to be careful, making sure that he's got his his top corners sealed off. Sorokin doesn't do that, and Cole Caulfield goes bar down from the short side there, from right in by the goal line. Finds a way past him, and it's just a filthy goal from Caulfield. And it's almost like at this point we take it for granted, the fact that Cole Caulfield is able to shoot like that and put pucks in from those areas. And it's his 41st goal of the season. He's having a hell of a season right now, and that's a hell of a goal to give us the lead in the final minute of the second period there. So yeah, just you take it for granted, but Cole Caulfield is just nasty from those areas. His 41st goal of the season on the power play, just absolutely electric. Gets the Bell Center rocking. Nick Suzuki and Slavkovsky get their 59th and 33rd assists respectively there. So another top line performance right there. Just fantastic from all three of those guys. Matthew Schaefer, though, will not be denied. Of course, he gets just a one-time blast that just goes through everybody on the power play to start the third period there. Unfortunate for Fowler. I feel like he didn't really have an amazing performance today either. Not all of it was really his fault by any means. I feel like that first and third goal, he might have been a little bit better positioned to make that save, but it happens. Of course, Matthew Schaefer is going to score anytime he's playing against us, because of course that's just the way it goes, and that ends up tying the game early. But then again, Caden Gooley comes up big. A couple minutes later, he just gets a bomb that goes off of a couple bodies, a couple deflections there, and ends up working out in our favor. That gives us the lead back. It's the second goal of the season. His only other goal coming in game 3 of the season against Chicago in Chicago. So a big time for Caden Gooley to wake up offensively and score a goal for us. Carrier and Gallagher getting the assist there as their 14th and 16th respectively, and that really just it's a domino effect from there. Caden Gooley scores to make it 4-3. Slavkovsky a couple minutes later gets a great opportunity. Caulfield and Suzuki the assists, of course. Slavkovsky gets his 27th of the season. Just a nice kind of he just found a wide open spot out in the slot there. Called Caulfield from behind the net, found him for a one-timer opportunity, and he's not going to miss from there. It's Slavkovsky's 27th. Cole Caulfield gets his 31st, and Nick Suzuki his 60th assist of the season. So he's breaking that 60 barrier there. Very impressive from all three of those guys, of course. And that really gave us some good insurance. And if that insurance wasn't enough, Cole Caulfield scores again. Nice pass from Slavkovsky. It's a good rush opportunity, and then Slavkovsky finds Cole Caulfield in a kind of a sweet spot right in the high slot area, and he kind of just is able to grab that puck in one time, and he beats Sorokin 5-hole for his 42nd goal of the season there. Slavkovsky, of course, getting his 34th assist, and Caden Gooley gets another point. It's his 8th assist of the season there, so another great performance by all of those guys. And if that wasn't enough, of course, Cole Caulfield scores his 43rd on the power play a couple minutes later for the hat trick. Nick Suzuki, the only assist there. It's a 2-on-1 opportunity. I feel like that's something that we've seen from the two of those guys all throughout their career. 2-on-1 opportunities, passing back and forth, and Cole Caulfield's not going to miss from in tight on a pass from Suzuki like that. He finds a way to score his 43rd of the season there. Suzuki his 61st assist there, and it ends up being a 7-3 victory for the Canadians. Bolduc scored later on, but of course they had to challenge it and ruin Bolduc's night there. But oh well. That's pretty much that's the tale of the game there. I feel like we really like blew it up at the end of the game there. We found a way in the third period to really create some separation. I felt like it was a very chippy game overall. I felt like the Islanders were not taking the loss very well. I thought it was kind of bullshit in my opinion to challenge a goal that when it was like 8-3 or whatever at that time with the goal counting, but whatever. But yeah, again, definitely some mistakes in there, definitely some things to clean up that we need to be a little bit better at moving forward. But, all in all, a big performance, a big 2 points that keeps us in that second in the Atlantic conversation there for at least another day. We got a big game coming up on Tuesday against the Hurricanes to keep things going. So yeah, that's going to be a big game for the Canadians, but really, what game isn't a big game for the Canadians at this point? Everything is meaningful as we come down to what is now 13 games left in the NHL season. We've only got 86 points right now. It looks like, the way that things are trending, the Canadians are need to get, eclipse 100, it seems like, if we're going to make the playoffs this season, because it looks like pretty much every team in the East is going to have 100 points if they want to make the playoffs this season. So the Canadians need to find a way to continue to win games. Obviously the Carolina Hurricanes are one of the best teams in the NHL right now, so they're not going to be an easy match for anybody, but it'll be good to get the some challenge in there and find a way to get those 2 points there. But again, I think if the Canadians can play a game against anybody the way that they played in that third period against the Islanders today, they will be unstoppable there. I feel like there's nobody in the NHL, no defense, no goaltending that can stop Cole Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slavkovsky playing the way that they did tonight with all of the support that they're getting from their other lines and defensive pairs. And Fowler, I feel like, didn't have a great game, but I feel like he stood tall when he needed to be. He didn't let it in anything egregious in my opinion. So again, like if they can play the way that they played, probably I would argue like 50 minutes of this game, if they can do that, then they'll be in a great position going forward. And I don't think that there's anybody in the NHL that can beat the performance that we gave in that last 30 minutes or whatever of the game, in that last 10 to 15 minutes of the third period there. So if we can find a way to continue to play that way, we'll be unstoppable moving forward. So obviously that all remains to be seen. Obviously we want to get points in as many games as we can coming down the stretch here, but that again, like, we just got to find a way to get one game at a time, just continue to play our game, find that sweet spot between offense and defense to be responsible and be offensive minded and all that kind of stuff. And as we go down to these last games, we'll have to see what happens, but we got faith in the guys. This is a big win for them, a big win that restores some faith in my mind that they can really make things happen going down the stretch here. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. So that is pretty much all I have for this one. I appreciate everybody watching, and I will see you after another big 2 points, big win over the Hurricanes on Tuesday.